Okay guys, so welcome to the next video. In this video we'll do a couple of things. First we'll fix this navbar. As you can see, this is like what will happen at the end of this video. We hide the sign out in case you are not signed in. Next we totally fix these two buttons. So if you click Facebook for example and I click continue logging, I get redirected to the dashboard component and I see the sign out button, and if you click the sign out button I am signed out. So if you're curious how to hook these two buttons and to do those redirects and whatnot, please stick around and watch this video. So one of the first improvements that we can do right now is to actually display the error upon signing up in case there is any. So if you remember, in the last episode we did set up our reducer to handle this error case over here, but our sign up component never actually displays it, and in fact when we were connecting Redux with this component, I told you that this connect method over here, well, its first argument is all about those state data, but the second is all about actions, and we explicitly said that, well, for now we won't deal with any state data, so we just put here null and skipped it pretty much. Well, now it's time to actually revisit that part, so we need to create a new function over here that will handle that mapping between the state and the props. So pretty much what we want to do is we want to choose, like pick and choose what state properties we care about in this sign up component, and we want to map those onto the props that we can then easily use throughout this code over here. So I'm going to say a function map state to props like this, and this function will receive one argument, and that is the Redux state, and its body will simply need to return a new object. So this object will consist of like key value pairs. So on the left we pretty much assign the props name, and on the right we carefully like choose what state we want to bind to it. Okay, so we need the error message, so let's simply call it like that. And where is it stored? Well, if you remember, it is stored inside of this error message property, which is stored in our like whole state, and there is this authentication reducer. So we have our state, we have our authentication part of the state, and then we have error message like this. Okay, and then what you need to do is you need to replace this null with map state to props like this. Okay, so now once this is done, we have access to this error message over here throughout this component. So we pretty much need to find a good place to actually display the error in case it is there. So maybe between like all of these fields and this sign up button. So I'll say over here, so over here we want to display the error, however we want to display it only in case the error is actually there. So we're going to use ternary operator and check whether it already exists, and only then are we going to show it. Okay, so what we can do is we need these squiggly braces because we're going to be writing some JavaScript. So we're going to say, okay, so we have these props that we just declared and it is called error message. Well, we need to check whether it exists. Okay, and then if it does, we do something, otherwise we render pretty much nothing or null. Okay, so now let's break this. Something like this. So over here what we want to render, if it is there, well, let's wrap it with some divs for example, and then over here we need to actually output that message. So to do that we again need to use these squiggly braces, and we're going to say this.props.errorMessage, like display whatever is in there. Okay, and otherwise we do null. I'm just going to move this up above, and because we're using Bootstrap we have some nice classes that we can use. We can say alert and then alert danger like this. Okay, and now if I save this, let's test it. Now in order to actually invoke this error, what needs to happen is, let me quickly check our action. So okay, it is mostly about email is already in use. So I believe I already made an account for CodeWorker. So let me try it. I want to sign up with codeworker@gmail.com again. and hopefully this will result in some sort of an error, and as you can see it is over here. So that is working right now. So the next thing that has been driving me crazy is, you see how we don't have any sort of like padding or margin on the left and on the right. So there is like really easy quick fix for that using Bootstrap. So I'm going to navigate to this like app component, which is like our most root level component, and then over here when we display like everything else, I'm going to wrap this up with another div. Okay, and then I'm going to simply apply a Bootstrap container class to it. Okay, so div class name equals container, like this. Now that should hopefully be resolved, and you can see it's totally different site already. So with that done, we can start tackling these two buttons, and once we do that, we'll have this sign up page completely finished, and then we can easily just like copy paste it for the sign in, and then we can move on to dashboard and signing out. Okay, so to do those two buttons, we need to install third-party dependencies, and let's do that next. Okay, so thanks to the magic of video editing, I have these two tabs open now. So one is called React Facebook Login, and the other one is called React Google Login. So we're going to install both of them. Let's open their npm pages. Okay, and as you can see, like the flow is pretty much we like included, and then we have some function that we write ourselves, and then we have this component that is there for us to use, and then this component is connected with this function of ours, and then whenever like this component does its job and get a access token and whatnot, we actually have it in this response, and then from over here we can fire some action creator, we can connect with our backend and so on. And React Google Login is pretty much the same thing over here. So let's us install that. So React Facebook Login. Okay, so I need to close this running process. I need to navigate back to the client, and you need to do so as well. Don't forget it. So npm install --c Facebook Login, and then let me just quickly check this one as well. Okay, so it's just the name, React Google Login. And while it's installing, we can actually do some work over here. So what we want to do is we want to go to this sign up, and we want to import them. So I'm going to say import Google Login from React Google Login, like this, and import Facebook Login from React Facebook Login, like this. Okay, then we need to create two new functions, two new methods. So I'm going to say response Google. It takes one argument, and that is like the response that it gets, and we'll also have response Facebook in the same manner. And then what I can do is, well, for now let's simply have console.log, and let's say response Google res, and console.log response Facebook res as well. And let me put all of these semicolons, because I'm trying to be consistent, but I kind of forget, as you can tell. So now that we have that things done, we can come back over here, and then we can actually replace these standard buttons with those newly installed components. Okay, so let's first start with, well, either one, but this is first in order. So we're going to say, okay, so this is a Facebook login component, and it will take a variety of properties. Okay, so the first thing is the app ID. This is something that Facebook gives you, and if you have been following this series in order, you already are aware of this. However, if you're not, I have these two videos. API Authentication part 12 is for the Facebook, and part 11 is for Google OAuth. So for example, this, like you can see, third minute, and so you see this dashboard page, and this is your app ID. So this is what you need to put. And for the Google, we'll do something similar, and you have on this video client ID. So this is also what you need to put a bit later. So hopefully you'll have it done yourself, but like for now I'm going to put mine. And then next what we want to do is auto load, set that to true. You have a property called text button, which is pretty much like what do you want this button to actually say on it. So I'm going to say simply Facebook. And then you have fields, which is like what fields should this component require from Facebook upon you like wanting to sign in using it or sign up using it. So this needs to be like in sync with what your backend also wants from Facebook. So we're using this pretty much the default of name, email and picture. And then we have callback. Now callback is what function should this component call upon it's finishing its job. So I'm going to say pretty much call response Facebook, this one. Oh my god, this scrolling isn't working the best. So this dot response Facebook, and please don't do it like this. You just need to like let it know its name, and that's it. So let's see what this looks like currently. So if we navigate back, I refresh, and okay, I need to actually start it. npm run start dev. Okay, I need to wait for it a bit. Okay, go to sign up. Okay, so you can see something is changed. And if you do this, you'll see that it successfully pulls our name and it will ask you to log in. And let's do for Google as well, but as you can see this button is really not that nice compared to like the other general style that we're using. So to fix that, you can also use this property that is called CSS class, and then you can pretty much like give it any CSS classes. So I'm going to say button, button outline primary, and let's see if that fixes it a bit. Okay, so this is much better. Okay, so now we need to do the same thing for the Google. So we're going to say again Google login and close it. And then we need to define properties. Now the thing with these two dependencies is like they're really similar, like in their names, in the way they work and stuff like that. But like the properties that you're going to list here are differently named, which is kind of a bummer because it would be nicer if all the properties were the same. So for example, over here instead of app ID we have client ID, and I'm going to paste mine, but you can go to that video and learn how to do it yourself. I'm going to leave some links in the description, and maybe those cards that pop up over here. I actually never tried to use them, so this is going to be my first time. And then we have instead of like text button, we have button text. So button text over here, and we'll say Google. And then we have in order like we had this callback over here. Right now we have on success, and you put pretty much what method should be called, and on failure, and again you put what method should be called. So we're going to handle both cases over here. So I'm going to say send in either case to this, and here as well. And then for a CSS class, well, it has to be different, right? And in fact it is, so it is simply class name over here. And we're going to say button outline, and we're going to say danger simply because we can like use that red style of Bootstrap to indicate Google. And as you can see, it kind of works over here. Let me refresh this. Let me also open the console. Okay, so you see something about this Facebook login. This is actually not our mistake. They simply are changing things around, and they want to force you to use HTTPS. So like in production, if your URL were simply like HTTPS, you wouldn't see this error. There are some ways to like use HTTPS like locally, but I mean, if I wanted to do that, it would be simply to hide this error, and I don't think it's worthwhile. So, okay, so now you see this. If I click to my account, you see that this response Google is what we're capturing over here, and you see that it it's getting all these things, and the thing that we're mostly interested in is this access token over here. So we need to grab that and then send it to our backend in order to authenticate using Google, for example. So we'll do that next. Okay, so now to handle these two cases, I had to actually kinda rewatch one of my old videos because, believe it or not, sometimes you forget the things you do. So okay, so in order for us to do this, we need to make this post request to this endpoint of ours on the backend, and the body should contain I should say an access token, and that's it. So we can get started on it next. I have also been digging a bit through our server code, so I'm going to close all of this. Okay, so we need a new action. We can call it something like sign up Google or like OAuth Google, probably that. So I'm going to say export const OAuth Google. Okay, it will again get some data and it will do some things. As a boilerplate code, let me also return async dispatch. And then let's stop over here for a second. I'm going to go back to this sign up, and over here I want to await this.props.OAuth Google, and I want to pass it something, but I just want to pass it pretty much the access token because we don't need anything else. So over here, if you remember, if I do this once again, and for some reason I'm having troubles right now, usually it's not the case, so I'm simply going to refresh it. Okay, so this time it remembered my previous say that I want to allow this access, so I immediately get it over here. So inside of this response Google thing, we have this access token as a property. So I'm going to say pass the response.access token like this, and then inside of an index, I'm simply for now going to say console log we received and then data. Like, this is the best debugging you've probably seen so far. So now if I come back over here, it failed to compile. Await is a reserved word. Sure it is. So I need to put async over here as well. If I actually refresh and I click this Google again, it will do its job. And it cannot read property props of undefined. Okay, so this is this issue, like this issue. So I'm going to simply say this dot response Google equals this dot response Google dot bind this, and then let's test it again. To refresh it, click on the Google, close it, and we received undefined. Okay, so why did we receive undefined? Let's see this. I'm actually wondering if this res that we're receiving, whether it's actually an object or maybe like a stringified object. So I'm going to say console.log type of res, and then type of res. And let's see what the case is, because sometimes you run into that case. Oh, but it is objects, and we did receive all of this time, so I guess it's working. Let's refresh just for a good measure and see if it will work the second time around. I have a feeling this pop-up is making things difficult for us. So if I do it right now, okay, so I think that was it. So I open this Google and everything is working. Okay, so it was this pop-up blocker, I think. So we received this, we're all good to go. So what we need to do next is over here, we can actually use Axios, and we can say like await axios.post. We want to post to HTTP localhost 5000 / users, I believe, OAuth / Google, and we want to send some data, and that data is going to be access token is equal to this data that we passed. Now I'm going to save response here as well, and I'm going to console log response as well, just so that we can see what we get back. Response. Okay, so I'm going to come back here, I'm going to refresh this, I'm going to close this Facebook one, clear all of this, and this time, as you can see, we got this sent. We have this response object, and the data it contains is our token. So it looks like everything was fine, and in fact this is the log from our backend, and yeah, it's definitely fine. It definitely like found my profile on the Google servers. So now that we have this JWT token over here, we can do something similar with it as we did previously over here. So we can say pretty much this line over here. So I'm going to say local storage.set item, and then JWT token is in response.data.token, and of course we want to dispatch a sign up action once again. So I'm going to say dispatch, and then I'm going to say type is authentication sign up, and the payload is res.data.token, like this. And if I just check, it should look the same. By the way, I'm a bit sorry, as you can tell, I haven't had this prepared up front because I really want to push these videos quickly so that you don't have to wait. So like one added benefit is that you can at least see me wrestling with errors and whatnot. So yeah. Okay, so this should be good now. What we can do next is even if we use like the local sign up over here, we never really redirected user to this dashboard component, so we can do that next. So how can we do that is if you go to the sign up component over here and find this on submit. I mean, we'll do it for both this and this and this, but we need to start somewhere. So after we fire off this action creator, we're going to say if there aren't any errors, because we don't want to redirect to dashboard in case we aren't able to authenticate. So we're going to say if this.props.error message isn't there, then do something, and we want to simply do the following. So this.props.history is something that we have access to, and we can like push whatever route we want to it. So we want to navigate to this following route, and this following route is dashboard, like this. And then I can actually copy and paste these 3 lines over here as well. And then if I actually come back over here, first of all, let me try this, like testuser01@gmail.com, test123, sign up. We are redirected to the dashboard, and we are actually like signed in, but you wouldn't know that judging by this Navbar, which we also need to fix next. But if I come here and I use the Google this time, and for some reasons I'm running in these iframe issues right now, but I haven't been having those in the past. So if you have any idea why is this happening now, please leave a comment, because I'm honestly not too sure. So if I click Google, I run into this iframe problem, and if I click Google again, this time it works. So, and as you can see, I'm redirected to this dashboard component, but I'm honestly not sure why I have those iframe issues. By the way, if you remember this error that we were having, the problems with iframe, I stumbled upon this Stack Overflow, and as you can tell, people here are saying that I've used this like Google sign-in JavaScript client for months without any problems, but recently like this error started happening, this problem. And as you can tell, I can confirm we're experiencing the same problem since recently, and this is like October 9, and this is like answered yesterday. And yesterday, so like for real, like this was working. I have used it for quite a bit of projects already, but as you can tell, something is different right now. So hopefully like we together can find out what it is and fix it. for now, let's forget about that. So next we can do the same for the Facebook. For the Facebook, pretty much I'm going to copy all these 3 lines because it's going to be super similar. And then I'm going to simply call this action differently. So I'm going to say OAuth Facebook. And then inside of here, I'm going to copy all of this, paste it below, and I'm going to say OAuth Facebook. And then I just need to change this to Facebook over here. So now we can test that. Okay, we need to add a sync over here. So a sync. And I also need to do the same thing over here for the Facebook. So this.response Facebook equals this.response Facebook.bind this. And save it. Now I should get back to here. I'm going to click sign up. For some reason it is auto-loading the Facebook, and I have a feeling that's because of this property over here called auto-load. So I'm going to get rid of this, and let's see if it still auto-loads, and it's not, so it's probably that. Now if I click here and I actually authenticate, okay, so this is that issue that I was telling you about, Facebook being really pushy on you using HTTPS, which is fine, but I'm going to continue logging in and let's see what happens. Okay, and as you can see, pretty much the same thing. So we even got the access token in the exact same place, the exact same name, and our code actually worked without any changes. So right now we've got those 2 things working, and we also auto redirect to dashboard. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to take care of this Navbar. As you can tell, right now you have no clue whether you are signed in or not. So let's do that next. Okay, so fixing that Navbar isn't going to be too difficult. You have already pretty much seen it all. So over here, I'm going to need to do a couple of things. Okay, so we need to have access to those state data, and we also need to have access to those actions because we want to wire this sign up with a specific action creator. Now, as a really good test for you, it would be great if you wanted to pause this video right now, try to do this yourself, see if you remember it, and then you can maybe like rewatch this part and see how close or not you were. But it's pretty much the same. So we need to come up above over here and we need to import a couple of things. So I'm going to import connect from React Redux, and then we also need to import all of our actions, but because that's like custom file, I'm going to make a space between those 2. So import everything as actions from, and then I need to go up 1 directory and then actions, and that's it. And then I need to get rid of this export default over here because we're going to do that at the bottom. And then I'm going to go all the way down, and I need to do 2 things. We need that map state to props function, and we need to export everything. So let's start with that map state to props function, which will receive a state as an argument, and then it will return some object. So return object. Right now we're only really curious whether the user is authenticated, so our prop can be called is authenticated like this. And how can we actually get access to it? Well, we have this state. Over there we have this authentication slice, and then we have is authenticated. Again, if you're unsure, you can check it out over here. Okay, and then we need to export everything. So I'm going to say export default. This time we don't need to use compose because we don't have that Redux form that was being a bit problematic. We can just do it like export default connect, and it will wrap around our header. And let me just put these semicolons, and inside of the connect, you again know we have 2 arguments. First is this map state to props, and the other is actions like this. Now what we can do is inside of this menu section over here, we can check if the user is authenticated. So we can say use a ternary operator once again, and we can say if this.props.is authenticated. If that isn't the case, okay, we want to do something, and that something is we want to show sign up and sign in links. Okay, so I'm going to pretty much cut this part over here. Okay, so if user isn't authenticated, we want to show those two things, otherwise don't pretty much show them. So do it like this. And why I'm getting this, okay, I need to put it as a list. Okay, let me just quickly check whether I broke something CSS wise, or okay, so far so good. And then the second case is like if the user is authenticated, only then do you show this sign up. So if this.props.is authenticated this time, please show this. Otherwise don't show it. And let me see if this works right now. So okay, we're now not authenticated, and we see sign up and sign in, we don't see sign out. If I come to sign up, I click on the Google, we wait a bit for whatever reasons, and now as you can see I am authenticated and I see this sign up. If I refresh and I lose that. Okay, now you see this, each child in an array should have a unique key property. Well, okay, we can fix that quite easily. So pretty much we have these two li elements in this array, so I can give them additional property called key, and we can put something over here. So this is about sign up, so I'm going to say sign up, and this one is about sign in, and so I'll put that. Now if I refresh, we should no longer see that problem. Okay, so no errors, nothing. And as you can see, while I'm navigating throughout different routes, the React is still remembering that I'm signed in, but as soon as I like either close a tab or like do a hard refresh, it loses it. And that's something we're going to do next. Okay, so let's quickly fix that. So what we want to do is inside of this index.js file, we want to check whether there is the JWT token, and if it is, we want to like directly put it in the state so that the Redux is aware of it. And that will actually mean that even if user like closes the tab or like closes the entire browser, that he or she should still be authenticated. However, if you actually go to the browser and you like clean all the local storage, then of course you won't be. What we need to do here is we can actually get that JWT token from local storage. Now this time we want set item, we'll actually get item, and what we want to get is JWT token. And then over here, if you remember, we have this provider and we have this store over here. This second argument to the create store is like the initial state. So over here we want to like make some space, and we want to modify the authentication slice of it, and we want to say token is JWT token if it exists, and then is authenticated is going to pretty much depend on that. So I'm going to say if JWT token is there, then the user is authenticated, otherwise he or she isn't. Now with just this small change, we should already notice that improvement. So if I refresh this, you see that sign out is still there. And if it refreshed again, it's still there. So I'm going to actually copy this, I'm going to close this tab altogether, then I'm going to open it. And as you can see, we are still authenticated. So that totally fixes it. And the next thing that we can do is we can actually handle this sign out case. Now the sign out case is going to be interesting with JWT approach, with JSON Web Tokens approach, because to sign you out, what we need to do is pretty much get rid of that JWT token from your browser. So what we need to do is we'll come to these actions, we'll create a new action. Let me put it below. So I'm going to say export const, I'm going to say sign out, and it will receive no arguments this time. And what it will do is it will return a dispatch. And as you can see, we don't even need to use async, because all we want to do is to use local storage and remove item. And we want to remove item called JWT token. And then we want to dispatch something that Redux is aware that user just signed out. Well, to be honest, we don't have that type over here yet, so I'm going to create it. So export const authentication sign out equals, and then this piece over here. And then inside of our index file, I must import it. I'm going to say over here authentication sign out, and then over here we're going to simply say dispatch the following. So the type is authentication sign out, and the payload is nothing pretty much. We don't have any payload over here. And let me put semicolons over here, semicolons over here, because I'm not using semicolons lately, but I still want to be using them in this series because that's how I started. And then we need to modify slightly our authentication reducer over here. So I need to import this authentication sign out type as well. And I need to come over here. I want to have this authentication error below everything else. So I'm going to say case authentication sign out, do something. And what we want to do is we want to return the state as it is. Then for the token we want to set it to that empty action payload. Okay, then we want to say that authentication is actually false, and error message, well, no error message right now. And the next thing that we want to do is to actually wire it up in our navbar. Okay, so go to the header. We want to create a new method over here. Let's call it sign out, for example. So I'm going to say simply sign out. It will take no arguments and it will do something for us. So we have this button over here called sign out. So we want to actually have an on click property, and whenever someone clicks on it, it should go to this this.sign out. Okay, and then I simply going to put console.log here that we can quickly check. Sign out got called. Okay, so now we can check it. I'm going to open console. I don't really need to refresh, so I'm going to click sign out, and sign out got called. Okay, amazing. So over here what we need to do next is we need to call this.props.signout. Remember, this is our action creator that we just wrote, and before I can actually call this.props, I need to bind this keyword. So I'm going to say constructor props. I'm going to call super with props, and then I'm going to say this.signout equals this.signout.bind this. And now I think this should work. Let's test it out. So I am authenticated, I click sign out, and I'm no longer authenticated. So let's check that once again. If I go sign up, if I click Facebook, for example, if I continue, it works. I am signed in. If I click sign out, I'm no longer signed in. Okay, great. So this has been quite a lesson, I think, because it's quite long and we covered quite a distance. In the next video, what we want to do is we want to guard this dashboard file, and by that I mean like right now I'm not signed in, as you can tell, but I can go to this dashboard component and it's actually showing whatever data is on it, so that shouldn't happen. And next we want to pretty much duplicate everything from this page for the sign in page and make sure it works as well. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave a like, and if you have any questions, leave a comment down below in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video.